Today is Shabbat Hagadol, and it's also, our parashat is Metzora. And I read this verse that really struck me. It started with the blessing, with the people having tza'arat, but also in the house. It says in Leviticus 14:34-35, when you come to the land of Canaan, which I give you as a possession, and I put the disease of tza'arat in a house in the land you possess, he who owns the house shall come and tell the Kohen that it seems to me there is a disease in the house. Isn't it interesting that God put the disease of tza'arat in the house, affecting its walls, as well as we read at the beginning, as the person and their clothing? Why wouldn't the carpenter be brought in to renovate or tear down the walls to get rid of this disease? Why a Kohen, a priest? It becomes obvious that this is a spiritual matter that is affecting the physical. Then, to make it even more challenging for us to understand, verse 51 says, and he shall take cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird, and in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. This sounds like a pagan voodoo ritual. How can cedar wood, hyssop, scarlet, and 2 birds work together to cleanse the house? Our rabbi constantly emphasized to us that Hebrew is not like our Western way of thinking. It's like a mosaic where we need to step back to see the bigger picture. And our challenge is finding the principles from those rituals and applying them for us today. Now, most of the stories in the Torah portray man's struggle with pride. Today being Shabbat Hagadol, the great Shabbat before Pesach. The 2 main characters in this story of Pesach are the Pharaoh and Moses. Pharaoh's character was the epitome of pride. He considered himself a god, while Moses was the humblest of men. But when Moses lost his temper due to his pride, he lost the opportunity to enter the promised land. But Pharaoh lost everything. Here we have 3 elements that depict the 2 characteristics of pride and humility: cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet thread. These would be used to heal the disease tza'arat. Cedar was the tallest of trees, which represents pride. In the same way that yeast represents pride at Pesach. This is why we're told to remove all the yeast from our homes before we celebrate it. On a spiritual level, we need to search and cleanse our hearts while we are removing the leaven, the yeast, from our homes. We need to rid ourselves of any pride that might stop us from being a student of life and a follower of God. We are all equal in God's eyes, and pride can make us think that we are better than others. There's so much on the topic of pride that we can say, but let's leave that for another day. Now, hyssop, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's the lowliest of bushes. It was used as a broom and represents humility. Scarlet thread was obtained by killing a specific worm, which was considered the lowliest of creatures. It also represents humility. When King David felt at his lowest, his weakness, he called himself a worm. We read that in Psalm 22:6. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by the people. Now, the ritual of using these three elements to cleanse the house was just hocus pocus and intended for a people who had been steeped in the superstitions of Egypt. There's no room for superstition when it comes to trusting God. Superstition is mind control, but many people are so stymied, so paralyzed by superstition that they cannot experience the freedom that God offers them in their lives. We need to constantly check our belief systems and free ourselves from the ones that have become a burden. God is giving us the way to choose life, always. And here I believe He's showing us the effect that our spiritual life has on the physical in every way. For example, scientific studies have demonstrated that classical music makes plants thrive, while heavy metal kills them. Could it be that there was so much negative energy in the house diagnosed with tzaraat that the very walls became contaminated? Negativity affects our psyche so deeply that maybe the woman of the house, through her unhappy state of mind, might have neglected it so badly that the walls grew mold. They became sick. Negativity can spread through an entire household. We've all heard the expression, happy wife, happy life. Women do not realize the power that they hold over their little kingdoms. We saw that Eve was able to convince her husband Adam to disobey the one command that God had given them. The consequences are still reverberating around the world. The spiritual affects the emotional, which then moves into the physical. I have seen that the more I deal with my past, forgive myself and others who have hurt me, when my thought patterns, my paradigms have shifted as I learn God's principles from the Torah, when I do not allow myself to drown in my negative emotions for long, I am being healed in all those places where I was and I'm still stuck. I can see that I'm being changed in every good way. I can focus better. I'm more organized at home and in my office. I have fewer areas of stuff hidden away in the corners of my mind that need to be cleansed. I am no longer overwhelmed by negative emotions, by feelings that don't allow me to live fully in the present and in His presence. It is where the natural and the supernatural merge. We all have areas, our areas that need to be cleansed. And walking with God affects us in amazing ways, where we slowly become the best person that we can be. We just need to ask and to act. There's a level of the soul or the neshama that we cannot comprehend while we are living in these three-dimensional bodies. Although the Torah doesn't speak directly about the evil tongue, lashon hara, we know that Miriam, the sister of Moses, was afflicted with tza'arat for gossiping to Aaron about Moses. Gossip is a trap that is so easy to fall into. There is a difference between speaking with someone to get their opinion because we truly want the best for the other person and speaking about another person in a way that destroys their character. And it affects the person who's listening. We are each made in God's image. And when we gossip, we are debasing the image of God. And there are spiritual consequences for this. Many of us become sick because we are gossiping. And that is part of the search for the leaven within us at Pesach. Instead of spending so much time cleansing, cleaning out our houses of yeast, taking out our second set of dishes, some to the point of even having a second kitchen or even a second home, let us remember to spend time searching for the chametz, the leaven, the yeast, the dirt in our hearts. Many of us have been glued to the news, watching what is going on in Israel, in the Middle East, and around the world. Personally, I can't stand watching people tear others apart on the news and social media. The gossip about politicians, corrupt or not, is rampant. Good people are losing their reputations, instigated by those who have a thirst for power. Truth is not easily found. If a house can be diagnosed with tzara'at, due to the negative spiritual energy within, how much more can cities, nations, and countries suffer from this disease? We may not be able to change the world, but we can change ourselves. What we see happening in the world didn't start yesterday. The solution lies in knowing from where we come. Our history is a long one. From the nations in which there were many gods, the creator of the universe, the only one, chose one man, Abram, to whom he would reveal himself, and to whom he added his name, Yud-He, when he would become Abraham. Abraham's son Isaac was chosen over his firstborn, Ishmael. Jacob was chosen over Isaac's firstborn, Esau. Joseph was chosen over his 11 brothers to bring us to Egypt, where God formed a new nation in Egypt's womb. Moses was chosen to lead his people out of Egypt after 250 years or more of slavery, to bring us to Mount Sinai and hand us the set of principles, the 10 Commandments, which would change the world. God chose you and I, the people of Israel, the Commonwealth of Israel, to be his emissaries, his messengers, and to be a living example to the rest of the nations, not to be like them. He made a covenant with us, and we accepted it and agreed when we said, "All that you have said, we will do." So we are chosen, and we are part of that agreement, that covenant. And when we break it, there are consequences, which, whether we realize it or not, resound around the entire world. We are ignorant of our own history when we say, "Why did God choose us? Let him choose someone else for a change." Many nations are screaming that their later books supersede the Torah that our God gave the world. Tzara'at is spreading through the nations of the world today, and our book, the Torah, most of which was written by Moses, the Torah alone holds the key to its healing, to our healing. Pesach is about you and I searching our hearts and crying out to God with King David's words in Psalm 139. This is what he said: "O Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I stand. From afar you understand my thoughts. You know my going out and my coming in, and you are well acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue, O Lord, that you do not know. You have hemmed me in on all sides and laid your hand on me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty. I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit? Where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, in the nether parts of the world, behold, you are there. If I ride on the wings of dawn and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand leads me. Your right hand holds me tight. For you have made my inward parts. You have formed me in my mother's wombs. In my mother's womb, I give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and that my soul knows very well. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there is any way in me that is grievous to you, and lead me in your way everlasting. Pesach is the story of the redemption of Israel, and it is the prototype for every nation's redemption at the end of time, as it is for our redemption. Shabbat Shalom.